functions are actually categorized into two. One is your main function, and the rest all functions are sub functions. So in your program, in your software, only one will be a main function, rest all are going to be an sub function. Okay, so only one will be a main function. Again, this sub functions is again categorized into two. One which has been written by you, another which has been written by someone else and provided to you. Okay, in the form of library they are going to provide. So if anyone else has written and then provided, for example, string compare function, is alpha function, printf function, scanf function, which we have not written it, someone else has written and then we are using it. Those all functions have been provided to us in the form of library file. So if you take a printf and scanf functions, so both these printf and scanf functions, you will find it in a file called as an stdio.h. Same way, string length, string copy, string cat, you will find it in string.h. Is alpha, is digit, okay, to upper, to lower, all these character related functions, you will find it in a ctype.h. So these functions have been written by someone else. They keep it in a library file and then provide to you. If I want, I can use those. So those such functions, we call them as an library functions, where the functions which we write for our own purpose. So for our own purpose, for example, I want to find out the quadratic equation where there is no library function. So I have to write on my own. So such functions are called as an user defined functions. The functions which we write, we call them as an user defined functions. So in this chapter, we'll study in detail how to write our own function, that is an user defined functions. Now, what is the syntax of writing a function? Now, whenever you write a function, there are three things involved. Okay, so function involves three things. One is you have to define a function, defining function, or else you can call it as a definition of a function. So whenever you want to write a function, there are three main things involved in it. First is definition of function, that is defining a function. Second thing is you need to declare, declaration of function. Third one is calling the function. Okay, three things are involved: definition of function, declaration of function, and calling the function. The function which you have written, at the end you're going to call it. So let's see how to do each one of this. So first we'll start with how to define a function, that is a definition of function. Now in the definition of a function, there is nothing but writing a function. The body of a function, we call it as a definition of a function. So every function will have something called as a return type. It's going to return a value. Okay, it's going to return a value. Now if you take an sqrt function, square root function, it's going to return a square root value. It's going that's going to be of type float. So if you take up string length, it is going to find out the length of a string. Okay, it's going to find the length of the string and return that value. So here return type is an integer. So this is a function which is finding out the length and return that length value. So here the return type is an integer. So square root, if you give a square root of 9, so it will find out the square root of 9 and then return the value. So it's going to be a float. So every function will return a value. So what type of value the function is going to return, that you have to specify. That is going to be a return type. Then this strlen, sqrt are nothing but identifier to a function. So you can call it as a function name. So every function will have its unique function name, and it is going to return a value. What type of value it is returning, that return type you have to specify here. Then as I told you earlier, if you want to find out the square root, okay, you have to pass this value whose square root has to be found. If you want to find out the quadratic equation, then you have to pass ABC value. Is it not? So those values when you pass to the function, we call them as an arguments. So every function will take some set of arguments, and the function has to be started with an open brace and you have to end with an close. Within this open and close, you can have some local variable declarations, okay, and then set of statements. Okay, so this is the syntax of defining an function. So you'll be having a return type, the function name, arguments, local variable declaration and set of statements. So any variable which you wanted only within the function, that can be declared inside the function. Okay, those are called as local variables. It gets created when you come inside. As soon as you come out of the function, those all local variables will be lost. Now if you take an example that is of finding the sum of two float values. Okay, I want to find the sum of two float values by using a subfunction. So fine, we'll give the function name as sum. Okay, it has to find out the sum of two float values. So those two float values I have to pass. I'll take it as a float x and then float y. Okay, two values I'll pass. And both the values will be added and you have to return that sum. So naturally the return type it's going to be once again a float. So here the return type is a float. The function name is a sum and it takes here two arguments, float x and float y. Open this curly brace and then you declare one local variable by giving a float s to find the sum. So s is equals to x plus y. And then this s value you have to return to the called function. If main_of is calling the sum function, for the main_of you have to return the value. So you can return a value by using a return statement. Give a return s and then close this. So this is how your function definition looks. You have a function name as in sum. It takes your two arguments, that is x and y, and naturally the return type, here you said return s is of type float, so naturally the return type should be an float. And this is a local variable and these are set of statements. This is the definition of an function.